From state systems to a society of states, Theevolution of international relations. European states began to form in the 15th century through war, religious heresy, and propaganda, replacing the Respublica Christiana. After the 30 Years' War, they sought to create a stable international anarchy by developing international law and a territorial balance of power, but this did not significantly reduce the incidence of war. The United Nations was the main legacy of World War II, but its efforts to manage the system were unsuccessful due to the Cold War and domestic wars, leading to a decline in interstate war and more international peace and security. The main problem in the contemporary system is civil strife, collapse, and humanitarian emergencies. The contemporary system of states is an international society regulated by laws, norms, and institutions, with rules such as non-use of force, respect for sovereignty, non-interference in internal affairs, territorial integrity, delegitimization of the right of conquest, trade laws, and respect for human rights. 1. Early state systems. Domination and subordination have been the predominant structural characteristics of relations between diverse polities since man began to organize into sedentary political units more than 10 millennia ago. Empires have been loose with substantial autonomy for their constituent units, but have also had effective forms of central control through military occupation, bureaucracies, and surveillance and taxation. Early empires had diplomatic military relationships, but these were irregular and rarely spilled over into the military diplomatic realm. State systems are composed of polities that maintain relationships at a high degree of intensity over time, including commerce, culture, diplomacy, and war. Examples include the Sumerian city-states of the 4th and 3rd millennium BC, the independent states within the Northeast Chinese cultural and geographic regions, and the system of relationships between independent polities in South Mexico. 1.1 The characteristics of relationships in state systems. Relationships within the early state systems were intermittent, irregular, and non-institutionalized. Trade was one form of interaction, while cultural and religious interaction was regular. Diplomatic contacts were sporadic, conducted by amateurs. Rulemaking between the units regulated some interactions, but did not include notions of sovereignty, territoriality, citizenship, or state responsibility. The history of independent state systems has been characterized by constant uncertainty and insecurity due to wars, invasions, conquests, treachery, and spying. Most states suffered conquest by a more powerful neighbor, loss of independence, and formal amalgamation into large political units. After centuries of constant warfare and conquests, the number of independent Chinese states decreased from several hundred to less than 10. The Greek city-states exhausted themselves and became easy prey for the Macedonian kingdom, while the Italian city-states lasted for 400 years before being annexed, conquered, and amalgamated into the Habsburg or Spanish empires. 2. Medieval cosmology and politics. Europe in the Middle Ages was a hierarchy under the rule of God, with distinct lines of authority, subordination, and fealty. This complex structure developed into a state system, unified by a common Christian religion. 3. Origins of the European state system. The central kingdoms of Europe began to challenge the authority of the Holy Roman Empire in the early 14th century, leading to claims against papal authority and a cascade of theological and political independence. Henry VIII's divorce of Catherine of Aragon and the Act of Supremacy abolished papal authority in England and elevated the king to be supreme head of the Church of England. Luther's Protestant heresy undermined papal authority in Northern Europe, leading to the collapse of the myth of a united Christian Europe under divine, papal and imperial authority. Jean Bodin's Les Six Livres de la République articulated a coherent theory of sovereignty in which the king or queen was supreme, with neither Pope nor Holy Roman Emperor having the right to rule or interfere. 4. The Peace of Westphalia, 1648. The 30 Years' War, 1618–1648, was the first great pan-European war, and the peace negotiations that led to the Peace of Westphalia had major consequences on the subsequent character of relations between states. The treaties declared that papal authority no longer extended into the realms of the sovereigns on secular issues, that the members of the Holy Roman Empire were free to make alliances with other states, and that the emperor was prohibited from molesting the empire's members. The treaties also guaranteed some rights for religious minorities and implied that sovereigns could no longer become involved in religious issues in other states. 4.1 The Legacies of Westphalia. Westphalia abolished the remnants of political hierarchy in Europe and established the fundamental rules that would regulate relationships in a system of legally equal, sovereign states. It also established the foundation of international law, which is based on the idea that sovereigns can be obligated only through their consent. The institutionalization of territory as the foundation for the state began in the 17th century, with the first frontier being drawn in the Treaty of Livia in 1670. This state bordering reflected the concept of sovereignty and its normative claim that states have exclusive legal authority within a defined territory. Europe prior to the 17th century was a borderless world, but by the early 19th century, borders were becoming increasingly institutionalized and effective as a means of controlling ingress and egress. At the peace settlement of Utrecht, negotiators referred to the repose, stability, of Europe and the need to compromise state interests for the overall interests of a European equilibrium and balance of power. Louis XIV attempted to create a pan-European hegemony for France, but many of the less powerful states of Europe feared it and sought to prevent any such future possibility by creating a balance of power on the continent. The early modern European state system was politically heterogeneous, composed of many different types of polities, and weak due to debt, insufficient government revenues, local insurrections, tax revolts, papal claims to authority, and challenges to state authority. 5. The legacy of the Napoleonic Wars, the concert of Europe, and the management of the states system. In 1814, the states that had contributed most to Napoleon's military defeat decided to create a new post-war order. They met in congresses and conferences to discuss issues such as recognizing new states, resolving crises, approving peace treaties, defining rules and norms for carving up Africa, ending the international slave trade, creating neutral zones and arms control agreements, selecting monarchs for states, and negotiating peace. The concert was a collective diplomatic directorate for the European states system. How many independent Chinese states decreased after centuries of constant warfare and conquests? The correct answer is several hundred. What empires were the Italian city-states annexed, conquered, and amalgamated into? The correct answer is the Habsburg or Spanish empires. What was Europe in the Middle Ages? The correct answer is a hierarchy. What was the structure of Europe in the Middle Ages unified by a common Christian religion? The correct answer is a states system. Who articulated a coherent theory of sovereignty in which the king or queen was supreme? The correct answer is Jean Baudin's Les 6 Livres de la République. What war was the first pan-European war? The correct answer is the 30 Years' War. Who could no longer be involved in religious issues in other states? The correct answer is religious minorities. Who abolished the remnants of political hierarchy in Europe? The correct answer is Westphalia. When did European states begin to form? The correct answer is the 15th century. After what war did European states seek to create a stable international anarchy? The correct answer is 30 Years' War. What is the main problem in the modern system? The correct answer is civil strife, collapse, and humanitarian emergencies. What are the polities that maintain relationships at a high degree of intensity over time? The correct answer is commerce, culture, diplomacy, and war. Where are the Sumerian city-states of the 4th and 3rd millennium BC? The correct answer is the Northeast Chinese cultural and geographic regions. What was one form of interaction? The correct answer is trade. Who conducted diplomatic contacts? The correct answer is amateurs. What regulated some interactions between the units? The correct answer is rulemaking. What causes uncertainty and insecurity in the history of independent state systems? The correct answer is wars, invasions, conquests, treachery, and spying. What did most states suffer from conquests? The correct answer is loss of independence.